Microtransactions, pre-order bonuses, DLC. No! You've got to understand where things have come from and where they're going in order to properly complain about the things you supposedly don't like. Alright, so I put out a video recently titled Stop Blaming Activision, in which I described what I see as the reasons why Activision keeps enforcing more and more microtransactions into Call of Duty, and how the position of blaming them and calling them a horrible company and placing all of the blame solely on this big, convenient, quote-unquote bad guy is actually a problem when the responsibility is our own as a consumer. I want to provide a bit more context and clarification to that in this follow-up video, because I had some more thoughts as to essentially why this market shift is happening, or has happened over the past 8 or so years, and where it's going to go in the future. So we got to look at one thing first, and this is something not a lot of people like hearing arguments against, although Total Biscuit himself is one who's very much led this kind of crusade against that market. But the used game market actually hurts game publishers and developers a ton. But when you buy a used game from GameStop or wherever, you are not contributing any money to the actual publisher or developer for their game. They are getting no money from you, which is why GameStop pushes their used games so much. There's a lot higher margins on those games because they keep all of the money. Essentially, what has happened is, in order to counter that market, well, here, let me go back first. The used game market, everyone's like, oh, but we need cheap games. That argument is completely moot if you look at the Steam market. Steam keeps every game in stock. Now, granted, this is a digital market and there is a slight issue of digital versus physical games, but as we move forward, physical games are becoming more and more irrelevant, especially in terms of the greater market on the whole, and by the time we actually make any large market change, we'll be pretty much digital only. So let's just focus on that. The used market hurts developers and publishers, and if you look at the Steam market, they keep obviously all games completely in stock forever because there's unlimited copies of digital games, and they run sales all the time. You can get games for dirt cheap. Especially during the big Steam sales, you can get games for as low as 75 cents. Way better than GameStop's used game sales. And that's allowed because there are no used games. There's no need to keep games at the full $60 price tag. And so you get a lot more sales, a lot more frequent sales, and generally lower prices. And that would actually happen if we got rid of the used game market with non-Steam games as well. Essentially, to counteract that, since game developers and publishers can't just directly shut down the used game market, they've taken a marketing approach of focusing on pre-orders. If they incentivize pre-ordering the game, buying it before it even comes out as strongly as possible and get as many people as possible into pre-ordering, then they get to maximize how much money they actually get from the game, because that's a lot more people that are not only buying the game from them in the first place and actually giving them money, they're buying the game in advance, which gives them more money for marketing up front. And more often than not, if you're pre-ordering a game, you're going to be a lot more susceptible to buying additional things, buying the strategy guide, buying the DLC season pass in advance, etc., or paying more for collector's editions. So that is their way of trying to counteract revenue loss from used games, is by incentivizing pre-orders as much as possible. That way, as many people as they can convince to buy the game directly from them up front, then they don't have to worry about, what happens with the used game sale. And if those people who pre-order end up trading the game in, the publisher already made their money, so they don't really care. And while obviously it's not a perfect, counter to the used game market, it has served them fairly well. Well, as we're starting to fight more and more against pre-ordering, or also to supplement it, because not everybody jumps on the pre-order bandwagon, we have microtransactions. These are literally, people hear the word microtransaction and jump on this, ooh, it's so bad, snowball effect here of a slope. But microtransactions are literally just small transactions. It is smaller purchases you can make to give money to the developer, or publisher rather, to pay more for your game to get additional content. And this is how they supplement more of that revenue. And we're going to see more and more microtransactions as we fight more and more against pre-ordering. In a sense, this is okay, as long as the games are complete at launch, and we're talking about DLC like complete DLC sets and cosmetic-y style of microtransactions were good. If they're holding out game content for microtransactions, that's bad. If it's day one DLC cut off the game, that's bad. We've been fighting against this for a long time, and the whole day zero on disc DLC concept kind of died back in 2011, 2012. So the lesson here is you have to pick your battles. We're not just gonna get complete, totally polished, no day one update, no stripped out DLC or anything like that games for $60 on launch. Like, that is a super ideal, perfect situation for the consumer that is just not going to exist, because that's not how the games industry functions nor works. We're not getting that. We're never going to get to that point. That's not how the system is going to work. So instead, you have to fight. You have to pick your battles of what you're fighting. Do you disagree with microtransactions, but you're okay pre-ordering? While a lot of us will drastically disagree with you because pre-ordering tends to be way more anti-consumer on the very basis of they're asking you to buy a game that you have no idea whether or not is good yet, whereas microtransactions allow you to support a game that you're already enjoying, you still take that stance. And for me, and hopefully a lot of us, the battle isn't that. The battle is pre-ordering, like I just said, is anti-consumer. It is demanding you to pay money for games that you have no idea whether or not are good, and based on promises that are rarely ever fulfilled, or microtransactions which allow you to support a game further after you already know you enjoy it. For me, microtransactions are always the better route, because they're always totally optional, other than in specific and very rare drastic circumstances. Microtransactions are always optional, and I don't even mean just like optional as in, of course you don't have to buy it, but optional as in the content itself is not required for you to enjoy your game. For example, Black Ops 3. You do not need those guns to enjoy the game. Black Ops 3 is actually incredibly well balanced. You're not missing out by not having those guns, especially since buying them in the first place is a gamble. I was talking to Falcon about this just as I was collecting my thoughts, and he brought up that not a lot of people thought Advanced Warfare was great, but yet they bought the shit out of those supply drops. Okay, that means they're clearly enjoying it enough to justify paying for it. Like, if you're not enjoying a game and yet you still throw money at it in the form of microtransactions or DLC, that is 1000% on you. No one's making you do that. If you're not enjoying the game and you do that, that's just your own fault. That's your own foolish decision. And then you have games like Rocket League, which I got for free on the PS4 via the PlayStation Plus program, and I've enjoyed my time with it so much that every time they pop out a new DLC, I don't mind throwing $3 or $4 at it. Yeah, it's just a couple cars or a couple antennas, but they made a really fucking good game, and I'm really fucking enjoying it. So there's no reason to complain about giving them money for the game to keep making it and keep spicing it up so it doesn't get boring and stay stale. And because, again, if you enjoy a game, you have no reason to complain about giving them money for your game. If you're that stingy, don't buy it. That's your choice. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit of a perspective and analysis of essentially where the market's going in regards to this, because games have to make money. We're at a point in the industry where games have to keep making more and more money because they keep getting bigger and bigger budget. Eventually that bubble might pop. We're already seeing major restructuring as essentially the second and third tier developers and studios are being shut down. Any studio that's owned and operated by something like Microsoft or Sony, but aren't publishing themselves, are still, fully engulfed in there, they're being shut down. We had Lionhead Studios get shut down. There was another one from like PlayStation Drive or something that got shut down recently that everyone was freaking out about. That kind of thing. Those second and third tier studios are no longer to be able to maintain funding because they're not able to compete with the full first-party AAA publishing. That's how the market's going. And so for a little while, we're going to have mostly, basic-level indie games that are solely self-developed and funded, and then the major AAA titles. But the market and industry is going to reform. It's going to restructure and change based on the new funding systems and funding models, and we're going to see those kinds of studios come back in a different way. And so games need money, and if you're enjoying it, you need to be able to give the game money. So if you don't want to pre-order it, then you gotta deal with them putting microtransactions in it. If you don't want to pay full price for it in the first place, you definitely gotta deal with microtransactions. And if it's free to play, you absolutely have to deal with microtransactions because there's literally no way to make a profit or even break even on a free game. So here's my ramble and rant for today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe to EposFox Gaming. I do appreciate your time. I have been live streaming over on YouTube Gaming once every now and then. I'm trying to get it up to like 2 or 3 times a week just for me to take a break from work and play some games with y'all. Multiplayer games and me playing through my backlog of single-player games and chatting it up in the stream and raising money for my fundraiser and things like that. Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Peace.